Hello and welcome to News in Depth here on TVP World. I'm your host, Diana Skaya. A top-level Ukrainian delegation is in Washington, and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy is expected to arrive there on Friday for his third visit to the White House during Trump's presidency. Now, the topic of discussion may be the possible sale of Tomahawk cruise missiles to Ukraine. And here with me in the studio to delve into the details is head of online news at the TVP World, Matthew Day. Matthew, so glad to have you here.
Happy to be here. With
us on News in Depth. So, Matthew, before I actually begin to ask you about your thoughts on this, I'm going to invite you to listen to what Donald Trump has said.
I think what you can take is that never give up. Just never give up. You know, last week they killed over 7,000 soldiers, mostly soldiers, and a little bit more, frankly, Russian soldiers than Ukraine soldiers last week. But think of it, every week they're losing from 5,000 to 7,000 soldiers. It's ridiculous. And I thought that would be one of my easier ones. I mean, when you settle something that's been going on for 31 and 32 years, that's, in theory, a lot harder than setting, something that's been going on for 3 years. But this is a war going on for 3 years, should have never started. Frankly, I give Ukraine credit for doing so well. I mean, they're good fighters. They're very good fighters. I really think that President Putin would look great if he got this settled. And I think he's going to settle it, but we're going to see. And if he doesn't, it's not going to be good for him. I might say, look, if this war's not going to get settled, I'm going to send them Tomahawks. I may say that. The Tomahawk is an incredible weapon, very offensive weapon. And honestly, Russia does not need that. They don't need that. Yeah, I might tell them that if the war is not settled, that we may very well do it. We may not, but we may do it. I think it's appropriate to bring up. Yeah, I want to see the war settled.
All right, Matthew, Donald Trump, they're saying a lot of things. I mean, apparently, like we just heard, that he thought that solving the war in Ukraine would have been quicker than the one in Gaza. Now, the main thing, of course, that we heard him say is that he might approve the delivery of those Tomahawk missiles to Ukraine. Now, I want to ask you this, what you think about that. Do you think he's being serious? Is it his part of a calculated negotiation strategy, or more that his patience with Moscow, with Putin, is actually running out this time around? Let's not forget the relationship that he's been known and shown that he has with Vladimir Putin. What's your take on that?
This time around, I think Trump has said many, many times that he's going to do something when it comes to Vladimir Putin and Russia to stop the war. And each time, nothing happens. So now, instead of talking about sanctions, which he has in the past, he's let many deadlines go. Nothing happened. Now he's talking about Tomahawk cruise missiles. And he's saying, maybe I will, maybe I won't, which is so we don't really know what he's talking about. But if we go with his track record, and if we apply what he said on sanctions, then he probably won't give the Tomahawk cruise missiles to Ukraine. But
he won't give them? Sorry, I didn't hear.
Yeah, he probably won't. If like he's been talking many times about putting secondary sanctions on Russia.
Right.
He's threatened that time and time and time again,
right.
But it hasn't happened. So maybe the threat of supplying Tomahawk cruise missiles to Ukraine is going to be the same as well. He's talking about it, but it may not happen. But of course, one thing we do know about Trump is that he can be rather unpredictable. So maybe it might happen. And actually, one thing which could maybe push Trump is that he might want to get some impetus from the settlement on the Gaza-Israel crisis. He's got the wind in his sails, and he says, OK, we've got one thing done. Maybe we really have to try and get the other thing done. And that might convince him to give Ukraine or sell Ukraine Tomahawk cruise missiles, because it would be a political statement in support of Ukraine and also give Russia quite a lot to think about.
Well, exactly what you just said there, quite a lot to think about. And I believe that Moscow would ultimately think that this would be an escalation, right? What can you tell us about how Russia's response will look like?
Russia thinks everything's an escalation. If you go back in time, supply of F-16, supply of Western tanks, supply of ATACMS, supply of HIMARS. They've all been an escalation, and the war just carries on. And Russia, well, we can't forget that Russia is pounding Ukraine every day with ballistic missiles, with drones. So surely you could say that in the sake of fairness that Ukraine should have the right to respond with foreign supplied ballistic missiles or cruise missiles, as in the case of Tomahawks. So Russia, I said, they call it an escalation, but as I said, everything is an escalation to them, and in a way it doesn't turn out to be the case.
Matthew, until recently, these Tomahawk missiles, it was a weapon that only a selected few have access to. What do we know about that?
Well, I think only a handful of countries have used crews that use the Tomahawk missiles, in addition to the United States. I think the UK, Japan, the Netherlands and Australia use them. So if Ukraine was given them, that would be a very good thing for Ukraine. But there are lots of conditions and caveats surrounding. Well, for example, Tomahawk cruise missiles, I think there are about 4,000 of them, estimated 4,000 of them in existence, well, in American supplies. Most of those are sea launched, either from submarines or from ships. Okay, Ukraine doesn't have capacity to do that, so we're talking about land launched. As far as I can tell, the United States only has a handful of land launched batteries which can fire them. And I'm talking about 2 or 3 maybe. So is America going to give them one of these? Probably not. Now, Ukraine has proven to be very ingenious at repurposing its own tech to fire things. Ukraine's incredible at this. So maybe Ukraine could devise something.
Matt, what we're seeing right now here, this graphic, is the range of these potential Tomahawk missiles. What do we know about its range?
Well, its range is good. It's up to, 2,500 kilometers. That would bring virtually all of Western Russia, well, Russia west of the Urals, within range. And I think that's there are some 2,000 targets now that could be hit with Tomahawk cruiser missiles.
So you're saying it would most likely change the game in the battlefield for Ukraine?
It could do, and then it couldn't. Once again, there are conditions. Like we talk about Ukraine getting these missiles, but how many? Is it 1, 2? Is it enough to make? You need critical mass to do real damage, real destruction. Firing 1 Tomahawk cruise missile won't make a difference. But if you can fire quite a lot, then they will make a difference.
Wow. Do you think that exactly that might be a point of discussion between President Trump and President Zelenskyy on Friday in Washington as to how many would be able to be provided? And I mean, from everything that you're saying, what do you think will come out on Friday?
Very difficult to say. I'm sure that President Zelenskyy is going to go to Washington, and he will like to get enough to at least worry the Russians. Even if these missiles aren't used, if he can get a decent number, then the Russians will be worried. They will have to take practical measures as well to counter it. They would have to move some of their factories east of the Urals. They'll have to disperse some production facilities as well. But when it comes to, say, like if Ukraine was going to attack Russian critical infrastructure like fuel or energy, that can't be dispersed. Therefore, Russia will have to increase air defences, which will stretch their air defences even thinner than they are now. You think how many targets Russia has to protect at the moment. And then if it's going to have to protect even more, that will make it very difficult. And also keep in mind that the Tomahawk cruise missile, one of its great advantages is that it's very stealthy. It can creep in where other Ukrainian weapons can't do, and it's extremely accurate as well. So it could be a source of concern for the Russians.
Let's listen to a soundbite by President Volodymyr Zelenskyy.
Dear Ukrainians, I just spoke with President Trump, the second time in the last few days. We're working closely with the United States to strengthen our air defense and all our defense capabilities. Patriots, first of all, other defense systems as well, including our active measures and long-range capability. We see and hear that Russia is afraid that the Americans may provide us with Tomahawks, a signal that this kind of pressure can help achieve peace. We agreed with President Trump that our teams and military will deal with everything that we discussed. This includes energy and gas. Thank you. We are counting on results.
We are counting on results. I mean, we just heard that coming out of Zelenskyy. Matthew, beyond those deliveries of Tomahawks, what other steps or capabilities you think Ukraine should prioritize from the United States? What is Zelenskyy going to push for?
Difficult question. I think one big issue that is looming large on the Ukrainian horizon is its budget. It's going to have a big hole in its budget for next year, and that needs to be filled. Ukraine can't fight the war without financial support. Military support is essential, but so is financial support. So it is quite possible that Zelenskyy will look for some kind of US financial aid, because soldiers need to be paid, pensions need to be paid, things need to be bought. And Ukraine can't do that without shall we say, quite considerable financial support, not just from the United States, but also from European countries and the EU.
You know, Zelenskyy also said there that the Tomahawks, if the Americans give us the Tomahawks, this is a signal that this kind of pressure can work for peace. How much do you think now that Zelenskyy is going to be able to, again, try and persuade Donald Trump to put pressure on Putin? And at this point, does Trump have any leverage on Putin towards meaningful, quote-unquote, peace talks?
Well, if we look at the first element, what can Zelenskyy tell Trump? Like if we go back to February when there was that nightmare press conference in the White House when Zelenskyy was torn apart by Trump, and Trump was saying, you don't have any cards. Right. Now, actually...
And by one of his sides who was criticizing his suit, right?
Yeah. And now Zelenskyy, you know, he can say, I have a lot of cards. Like the fact that Ukraine has been very successfully pounding Russia's petrochemical industry. Right. And Ukraine has shown that it has a military capacity to work on its own. It has a strike capacity, its own strike capacity, to inflict damage on Russia. And it's damage that Russia really can't afford to carry on taking. So, and Zelenskyy can tell Trump, look, we are hitting Russia hard, and if we carry on hitting Russia hard, it could break. And if we have your help, we could even make Russia break even earlier and force Putin to the negotiating table. So that's one element. The other element in your question, what leverage does Trump have over Putin? Well, Tomahawk cruise missiles could be one. If he said, look, here's 100 to the Ukrainians, and that would be fantastic. Right. That could be one way to pressure him. But then, of course, we come round back to the secondary sanctions, really targeting Russia's shadow fleet, for example. That could hit Putin very hard. And if Trump told Putin that, then maybe the war could be ended far quicker than it is. And, of course, Trump wants to be seen as a peacemaker, so maybe...
And also, I mean, he did say that like we talked about this in the beginning, right? That he thought that it would be much easier to end the war in Ukraine than in the Gaza Strip.
Only he thought that, I believe. But.
Matthew, Ukraine has produced its own Flamingo-guided missile with a 1-ton warhead and declared a range exceeding 2,000 kilometers. Do you think it could be compared to the Tomahawk missile?
I think the Flamingo is great. What a great name for a missile.
For a missile, right?
Yeah, it actually has a range of apparently of up to 3,000 kilometres, so its range exceeds that of the Tomahawk. But it does have a number of limiting capacities. It is, like the Tomahawk, it is quite slow, but unlike the Tomahawk, it is not stealthy. It's got this rather funny shape. It looks like a V-1 flying bomb from World War II. And therefore its radar profile is quite high, and therefore that combined with its relatively slow speed, it can be shot down. So it's not a stealth weapon. And also Ukraine has problems with production. It has bottlenecks, like I think particularly when it comes to the engine of the Flamingo, so that it can make so many of the airframes, but it can't make enough engines quickly. So there are bottlenecks. It has supply issues. So that's another drawback for the Flamingo. And it apparently is not super accurate either. It's pretty accurate, so maybe when it comes to taking out a oil refinery, that's grand. But if you wanted to target something more specific, like a command center, then the Tomahawk would be far better and far more suitable.
Finally, Matthew, I want to ask you, TVP World spoke to former Ukrainian President Petro Poroshenko, and what he said is that it would be possible for Ukraine to defeat Russia with the backing of NATO, the United States and the EU, but without the need of foreign troops. What do you think about that statement?
Without the use of foreign troops, I presume he's not. I presume he's not talking about foreign troops in an offensive capacity or something like that, or maybe as in some sort of peacekeeping mission. Or
you tell me.
Ukraine doesn't need foreign troops. Ukraine needs Western supplies of
Tomahawk missiles.
Yep, that's one thing. It also needs production. It also needs money as well, financial support. And it needs to be given the ability to just strike Russia again and again and again. It's the only thing that will really push Putin to the negotiating table. It needs to have this capacity. And when it comes back to Tomahawk cruise missiles, it needs to be given the autonomy to use these missiles where and when it thinks appropriate. Because one of the problems maybe with the Tomahawk cruise missiles is that they're so technology advanced that you might need US or NATO oversight to apply these missiles, which would be
how would that look like?
Well, that could limit.
To limit what?
Limit the targets, because Ukraine might need to ask permission to say, hey, we want to use a Tomahawk missile against this target. And the Trump administration might say that's too sensitive, you can't use it in that situation. Ukraine, to win the war, needs to have complete autonomy so it can hit the targets that it feels appropriate, that is required to inflict that utmost damage on the Russian war machine.
We'll also see how all these developments will unfold on Friday and whether or not Donald Trump will actually provide these Tomahawk missiles.
Yeah. It'll be interesting to find out.
Thank you so much, Matthew, Dave, for being with us here. News
it's
in
a
Depth,
pleasure, as always.
TVP World. And thanks for watching this episode of News in Depth. I'm Diana Skaya. Stay with us for more news and exclusive features.